It was a blatant act of vandalism, of trespassing, of treeicide. That bitch! I yelled, slamming my fist on the table. My blood was boiling. I was beyond furious. I was ready to unleash hell. So what can we do? I asked. I mean, she just came in and removed my trees. Well, continued my lawyer, first things first, we will make sure the police have pressed charges. Then we sue her and the HOA. For everything. The trees, emotional distress, punitive damages. We're going to make an example out of her, George. This kind of behavior cannot be tolerated. Good, I say. Good. The younger officer, a woman with a sympathetic look on her face, shook her head in disbelief. That's unbelievable, she said. She just cut down your trees? Without your permission? She's the HOA president, I explained. She thinks she's above the law. The older officer sighed. We see this kind of thing more often than you'd think, Mr. Miller. HOA disputes getting out of hand. But this is something else. Let me tell you about my backyard. It's my happy place, my sanctuary, my escape from the soul-crushing conformity of suburban life. I'm George Miller, by the way, and I'm what you might call a nature enthusiast. I like trees. I like birds. I like squirrels. I like not having my retinas seared by the relentless glare of the afternoon sun. And for years, my backyard, shaded by a collection of magnificent, mature oak trees, has provided all of that. These weren't just any trees. These were oaks. We're talking old growth, majestic, the kind of trees you'd see in a fairy tale kind of oaks. They were the defining feature of my property, the reason I bought the house in the first place. My backyard, thanks to those trees, was an oasis. A green, leafy escape from the beige sameness of Pleasant Valley. And then it arrived, the harbinger of doom, the enemy of all things natural and good. The letter. It was just sitting there, on my porch, innocently nestled between a grocery store flyer and a catalog for overpriced gardening tools. But I knew. Oh, I knew. That thick, cream-colored envelope, emblazoned with the Pleasant Valley Homeowners Association logo, could only mean one thing: trouble. Oh no, I muttered, my stomach doing a little flip-flop. Not again. I ripped open the envelope, my eyes scanning the official-looking document inside. And there it was, in black and white, the latest assault on my peaceful existence. Violation notice, landscaping. It has come to the attention of the Architectural Review Committee that your property contains trees that are in violation of community landscaping guidelines. Specifically, the trees located in your backyard are deemed to be of an unapproved species and exceed the maximum allowable height for residential properties. You are hereby required to remove the offending trees within 30 days of the date of this notice. Failure to comply will result in fines and potential legal action. Unapproved species? I stared at the letter, incredulous. Unapproved? What did that even mean? Were my oaks not trendy enough for Pleasant Valley? Were they the wrong shade of green? Did they not conform to the HOA's vision of what, exactly? A treeless wasteland? They're coming for my trees, Emily, I exclaimed, pacing my kitchen while on the phone with my best friend. My trees! They're saying they're unapproved. What is this, some kind of arboreal apartheid? Emily, who'd lived in Pleasant Valley longer than I had, and had her own share of HOA horror stories, sighed on the other end of the line. Sounds like Karen Thompson's on the warpath again, George. She's probably got a new measuring tape and a vendetta against anything that casts a shadow. Karen Thompson, I growled. The name was synonymous with HOA tyranny. She was the president, the queen bee, the Karen of Pleasant Valley. Buckle up, George, Emily said. It's going to be a bumpy ride. Oh, I'm buckled, I replied, my voice hardening with resolve. And I'm bringing the whole damn forest with me. The next HOA meeting was my chance for a showdown. I wasn't going down without a fight. I was going to defend my trees, my property, and my right to have something other than perfectly manicured, HOA-approved shrubbery in my yard. I prepared for the meeting like I was preparing for a legal battle. I printed out photos of my trees, from every angle, showcasing their majestic beauty. I found arborist reports online highlighting the benefits of mature trees for property values and the environment. I even printed out a copy of the local zoning ordinances just to prove I wasn't breaking any actual laws. The meeting was held, as always, in the Pleasant Valley Community Center, a room that seemed to be deliberately designed to be as bland and uninspiring as possible. The walls were beige, the carpet was beige, the chairs were beige. The only decorations were framed pictures of perfectly manicured, treeless lawns. It was like an ode to conformity. And then she walked in. Karen Thompson, the tree tyrant of Pleasant Valley. Karen was everything I expected. She was a middle-aged woman with a tightly permed blonde bob, a permanent frown etched on her face, and the kind of steely glint in her eyes that could freeze molten lava. She was wearing a floral print dress that somehow managed to be both frumpy and aggressively cheerful at the same time. She looked like she'd personally declared war on joy. She took her place at the head of the table, gavel in hand, and surveyed the room with a look of barely concealed disdain. "Good evening, everyone," she said, her voice sharp and clipped. "Let's get straight to business. We have a situation to address." She clicked a button, and a projector flickered to life, displaying a PowerPoint presentation. The title slide read, "Maintaining a Uniform and Aesthetically Pleasing Landscape in Pleasant Valley, a Guide to Compliance." I rolled my eyes. This was going to be painful. Karen droned on and on about the importance of curb appeal, property values, and maintaining a consistent aesthetic throughout the community. She showed slides of approved landscaping. Perfectly symmetrical flower beds, neatly trimmed hedges, and lawns so uniform they looked like they'd been painted green. It was a suburban nightmare. And then she got to my trees. A picture of my backyard flashed on the screen, my beautiful, majestic oaks towering over my house. The caption read, "Exhibit A, Arboreal Anarchy." Arboreal anarchy? I almost laughed out loud. "As you can see," Karen said, her voice dripping with disdain, "Mr. Miller's property is in flagrant violation of our landscaping guidelines." These trees," she said the word like it was a disease, "are too tall. They're overgrown. They're unruly." She paused, searching for the most damning criticism she could muster. "They block my view of the sky," she finally declared, as if the very existence of my trees was a personal affront to her. "And they are not even on the approved species list. We do not have room for such nature in our neatly organized neighborhood," she continued, her voice rising with righteous indignation. "We are a community of minimalist landscaping, Mr. Miller, not a forest. This is my neighborhood, and such flagrant disregard of the rules cannot go unpunished." I stood up, ready to defend my arboreal friends. "Karen," I began, trying to keep my voice calm and reasonable. It was a Herculean effort. "Those trees were there before you even moved into this neighborhood. They're not violating any zoning laws. They're healthy, they provide shade, they're home to countless birds and squirrels. I even pointed out that several other houses in Pleasant Valley had trees, though, admittedly, none were quite as magnificent or as strategically positioned to block Karen's view of the sky. "I'm even willing to trim them," I offered, as a concession, though the thought of cutting even a single branch pained me. Karen cut me off with a dismissive wave of her hand, her expression one of pure, unadulterated disdain. "The rules are clear, Mr. Miller," she said, her voice as cold and hard as granite. "The trees must go. They are not in keeping with the Pleasant Valley aesthetic. This is my neighborhood now, and I won't have it looking like some overgrown wilderness." My neighborhood? The arrogance, the sheer unmitigated gall. I was furious. My carefully prepared arguments, my arborist reports, my offers of compromise, it was all useless. Karen Thompson wasn't interested in reason. She was interested in power, and she was determined to use that power to force me to chop down my beloved trees. But as I sat there, seething with anger, a plan began to hatch in my mind. A beautiful, brilliant, tree-vengeful plan. If Karen wanted a war over trees, she was going to get one. But she wasn't going to like the outcome. Not one bit. Because I was about to unleash a level of arboreal absurdity that Pleasant Valley had never seen before. The HOA meeting had been a declaration of war. Karen had thrown down the gauntlet, and I, George Miller, champion of trees and backyard barbecues, had picked it up. But before I could unleash my master plan, I had a pre-planned weekend trip scheduled. A short getaway to the mountains, a chance to recharge and escape the suburban madness for a few days. "Don't worry, my leafy friends," I said to my oak trees, giving one of them a reassuring pat on its trunk before I left. "I'll be back, and we'll show Karen Thompson what we're made of." I left Friday afternoon, leaving my trees standing tall and proud, their leaves rustling in the breeze, a silent testament to my defiance. I imagined Karen driving by, seething with impotent rage, and it brought a smile to my face. I spent the weekend hiking, breathing in the fresh mountain air, and generally trying to forget about the impending HOA battle. But even surrounded by the beauty of nature, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. I had a bad feeling, a nagging sense that something wasn't right. I returned home on Sunday evening, exhausted but refreshed, ready to face whatever Karen Thompson threw my way. As I turned the corner onto my street, I felt a sudden, sharp pang of dread. Something was off. And then I saw it, my yard. It was bare. My beautiful, majestic oak trees, the trees that had shaded my house, provided a home for wildlife and stood as a symbol of my defiance. They were gone, reduced to nothing but stumps and piles of wood chips. I slammed on the brakes, my car screeching to a halt in the middle of the street. I just sat there, stunned, speechless, my heart pounding in my chest. It was like a scene from a horror movie, a nightmare made real. My sanctuary, my oasis, had been violated, desecrated, destroyed. "No," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "No, no, no." I stumbled out of the car, my legs feeling weak and shaky. I walked towards the empty space where my trees had once stood, my mind struggling to comprehend what I was seeing. It was like a part of me had been ripped away. The grief hit me first, a wave of sadness and loss so intense it almost brought me to my knees. These trees had been a part of my life for years. I'd watched them change with the seasons. I'd listened to the wind rustling through their leaves. I'd found solace in their silent, enduring presence. And now, they were gone. Then, the grief turned to anger, a cold, burning fury that consumed me. Karen. It had to be her. Who else would do something so cruel, so vindictive, so utterly illegal? She'd threatened to remove my trees, and now, while I was conveniently out of town, she'd done it. She'd crossed a line. She'd gone too far. I remembered the security cameras I'd installed. It was after the mailbox incident. I rushed inside, my hands shaking as I pulled up the security footage on my computer. I fast-forwarded through the weekend, searching for any sign of activity. And then I saw it. Saturday morning. Bright and early. A truck pulling up to my house? a crew of workers unloading chainsaws and other equipment. And there, standing on my lawn, directing the whole operation like some kind of deranged lumberjack dictator, was Karen Thompson. The footage was clear as day. It showed Karen, in her pastel-colored tracksuit and her perfectly coiffed hair, pointing at my trees, gesturing, giving orders. It showed the workers cutting down each tree, one by one, reducing them to logs and sawdust. It showed Karen smiling, a smug, satisfied expression on her face, as she watched my beloved oaks fall to the ground. It was a blatant act of vandalism, of trespassing, of tree-icide. That bitch! I yelled, slamming my fist on the table. My blood was boiling. I was beyond furious. I was ready to unleash hell. First I called my lawyer, then I called the police. My lawyer, thankfully, was available, even on a Sunday. He listened, his tone growing increasingly serious as I described the events. George, she trespassed. She destroyed your property. This is open and shut. She has no leg to stand on. So what can we do? I asked. I mean, she just came in and removed my trees. Well, continued my lawyer, first things first, we will make sure the police have pressed charges. Then we sue her, and the HOA, for everything. The trees, emotional distress, punitive damages. We're going to make an example out of her, George. This kind of behavior cannot be tolerated. Good. I say, good. He calms me down and advises to remain calm, not to approach Karen, that he would handle everything. The police arrived shortly after I'd called them. 2 officers, a young woman, and a more experienced-looking man. They surveyed the scene, the empty stumps, the piles of wood chips, the expression on my face that probably screamed homicidal rage. "Mr. Miller," the older officer said, "can you tell us what happened here?" I explained everything, my voice shaking with anger. I showed them the security camera footage, the damning evidence of Karen's illegal tree massacre. The officers watched the footage, their expressions hardening. The younger officer, a woman with a sympathetic look on her face, shook her head in disbelief. "That's unbelievable," she said. "She just cut down your trees? Without your permission?" "She's the HOA president," I explained. "She thinks she's above the law." The older officer, a man named Officer Johnson, sighed. "We see this kind of thing more often than you'd think, Mr. Miller. HOA disputes getting out of hand, but this is something else." They interviewed the neighbors, who confirmed they'd seen Karen and the work crew. They even tracked down the tree removal company, who, to their credit, were horrified to learn they'd been involved in an illegal act. They claimed Karen had told them she had the homeowner's permission. They were clearly duped. "We're building a case, Mr. Miller," Officer Johnson said, handing me a card. "It might take a little time, but we'll get her. Trespassing, property damage, possibly even criminal mischief. She's facing some serious charges." "Good," I said, my voice still tight with anger. "She deserves it." I knew it wouldn't bring back my trees. Nothing would. But seeing Karen Thompson face the consequences of her actions, that, at least, would be some small measure of justice. And it would give me the time, and the motivation, to put my real plan into action. The plan that would make Karen Thompson regret the day she ever laid eyes on my beautiful oak trees. The plan that involved artificial palm trees. And lots of them. The illegal destruction of my beloved oak trees had lit a fire in me. A fire of righteous indignation, of burning injustice, and of a deep, profound desire for revenge. I wasn't just angry, I was motivated. Karen Thompson had declared war, and I, George Miller, was about to unleash a level of petty, glorious, HOA-defying retaliation that Pleasant Valley had never seen before. "She took my trees," I muttered, pacing my now empty backyard, the stumps of my oaks a constant, painful reminder of Karen's treachery. She thought she could get away with it. She thought she could control me, control my property, control my life. But Karen had underestimated me. She'd underestimated my stubbornness, my creativity, and my willingness to exploit every loophole in the ridiculously convoluted Pleasant Valley HOA bylaws. I wasn't just going to replace my trees. Oh no, that would be too easy. Too expected. I was going to do something spectacular, something over the top, something so utterly, gloriously un-Karen that it would make her head explode. I need a plan, I said to myself. A master plan. A plan so ingenious, so perfectly crafted, that it will leave Karen Thompson speechless and powerless. And that meant, once again, diving into the legal abyss that was the Pleasant Valley HOA covenants, conditions, and restrictions. "All right, you monstrous document," I said, cracking open the binder. "Let's see what secrets you're hiding this time." I spent hours poring over the bylaws, my eyes scanning the pages, searching for inspiration, for a loophole, for anything I could use to my advantage. I was looking for a way to fight back, to reclaim my yard, to make a statement that Karen Thompson would never forget. And then, I found it. Tucked away in Section 14, Landscaping and Grounds Maintenance, under subsection C, Approved Landscaping Guidelines, was Rule #14C. It read, "Only natural trees, shrubs, and plants require HOA approval and are subject to height restrictions and species limitations, as outlined in Appendix B. Artificial landscaping features, including but not limited to sculptures, fountains, decorative structures, and artificial foliage, are exempt from these restrictions, provided they do not pose a safety hazard or violate any city ordinances." I reread the rule slowly, a wide, almost maniacal grin spreading across my face. Artificial landscaping features, exempt from restrictions. This was it, my golden ticket, my legal get-out-of-jail-free card, my pathway to the most epic, most satisfying, most tropical revenge imaginable. "Oh, Karen," I chuckled, the sound echoing through my empty backyard. "You wanted minimalist landscaping? You wanted uniformity? Well, get ready for a whole new level of unapproved." The plan started to take shape in my mind, and it was beautiful. It was audacious. It was ridiculous. And that's exactly what made it so perfect. I wasn't just going to plant a few small, discreet, fake bushes. Oh no, I was going big. I was going tropical. I was going to transform my barren, treeless backyard into a scene straight out of a Las Vegas resort. I envisioned giant, towering, artificial palm trees. The kind you see at theme parks, or lining the streets of Hollywood, or in the extravagant lobbies of fancy hotels. The kind that scream tropical paradise and absolutely, positively not natural to this climate. "This is going to be glorious," I said to myself, rubbing my hands together with glee. I went online, searching for giant artificial palm trees, and oh boy, did the internet deliver. I found websites dedicated to selling every imaginable type of fake tree, from tiny tabletop bonsai to massive, multi-story palms. I found a company that specialized in custom-made artificial trees for commercial projects, theme parks, casinos, hotels, that sort of thing. They had pictures of their creations, towering palm trees with incredibly realistic-looking trunks and fronds. They even offered lighting options. This was it. This was exactly what I needed. I contacted the company, my voice filled with barely contained excitement. "I need palm trees," I said. "The biggest, tallest, most flamboyant palm trees you have. And I need them to be spectacular." The sales representative on the other end of the line seemed a little taken aback, but he was happy to take my order. We discussed height, trunk diameter, frond style, and, of course, the all-important lighting. "I want neon," I said decisively. "Bright, flashing, multicolored neon lights. The kind that can be seen from space." The sales rep chuckled. "You got it, sir? Anything else?" "Yes," I said. "I want them to be permanent. I want them to be anchored in concrete. I want them to be so firmly planted that it would take a hurricane to move them." The order was placed. The price tag was substantial, but it was worth it. Every penny. Next, I checked with the city. I needed to make sure I wasn't violating any actual laws. I went down to the city planning department, armed with my sketches and the specifications for my artificial palm trees. "I'd like to install some decorative structures in my backyard," I said to the clerk, trying to keep a straight face. The clerk raised an eyebrow, looked at my plans, and then burst out laughing. "These aren't decorative structures, sir," he said. "These are palm trees." "Artificial palm trees," I corrected him. "And according to the city code, there are no height restrictions on artificial landscaping features." The clerk checked the regulations, a grudging smile spreading across his face. "Well, You're right. Go for it, sir. Just try not to blind the pilots." I got my permit. I was officially cleared for takeoff. The palm trees arrived a week later, delivered on a massive flatbed truck. They were even bigger and more ridiculous than I'd imagined. The trunks were thick and textured, the fronds were long and graceful, and the neon lights, oh, the neon lights! They were glorious. I hired a crew to install them. It took a crane, a team of workers, and a whole lot of concrete. But by the end of the day, my backyard was transformed. I had a grove of 5 towering artificial palm trees, each one reaching a height of over 30 feet, their neon lights flashing in a dazzling display of tropical-themed defiance. And because I'm all about the details, and because I wanted to leave no doubt about who had inspired this whole project, I had one final touch added. I commissioned a custom-made sign, which I had installed at the base of the largest palm tree. It read in bold, bright letters, "Thompson's Tropical Oasis." It was perfect. It was absurd. It was the ultimate act of HOA rebellion. And it was just the beginning of Karen Thompson's nightmare. I looked up at the creation. I took in the size, the lights, the fact I had palm trees in a place they shouldn't be. It is good, I say to myself. The installation was complete, and it was glorious. My backyard, once a barren wasteland of tree stumps and wood chips, was now home to a grove of giant artificial palm trees. 5 of them, to be exact, each one towering over 30 feet tall, their plastic fronds swaying gently in the breeze, or rather appearing to sway gently, since they were, plastic. And the lights. Oh, the lights. Bright, flashing, multicolored neon lights that illuminated the entire yard, and probably a good portion of Pleasant Valley, in a dazzling display of tropical-themed defiance. It looked like a bizarre, beautiful, utterly incongruous oasis in the middle of suburban Pleasant Valley. It was like someone had accidentally dropped a slice of Las Vegas into my backyard. It was perfect. "This is going to drive her insane," I said to myself, admiring my handiwork. Absolutely insane. Now all I had to do was wait. I knew Karen Thompson's routine. She was a creature of habit, a woman who lived her life by the clock and the HOA rulebook. And her daily power walk, a brisk, arm-pumping circuit of the neighborhood, took place at precisely 7 a.m. So I set my alarm, brewed a pot of coffee, and settled into a lawn chair, one of my old lawn chairs, thankfully spared from Karen's wrath, strategically positioned to have a clear view of the street. "It's showtime," I whispered, a grin spreading across my face. 7 a.m., right on schedule. I saw her coming, Karen Thompson, power walking down the sidewalk, her floral print visor firmly in place, her expression set in that familiar look of grim determination. She turned the corner and stopped dead in her tracks. The scream, oh, the scream! It was a thing of beauty, a high-pitched, ear-splitting shriek that echoed through the quiet morning air. It was a mixture of rage, disbelief, horror, and, I like to think, a touch of grudging admiration. I took a slow, satisfied sip of my coffee. This was even better than I'd imagined. Karen didn't even bother trying to be civil. She marched up my driveway, her face contorted with fury, her fists clenched, her floral print visor practically vibrating with rage. "What is this?" she yelled, her voice hoarse from her earlier scream, pointing a trembling finger at the towering, neon-lit palm trees. "What have you done?" I, meanwhile, remained seated, calmly sipping my coffee, the picture of relaxed, suburban defiance. "Those, Karen," I said, my voice smooth and even, "are my new trees. Artificial trees, to be precise. And as you may recall from the HOA bylaws, Section 14, subsection C, artificial landscaping features are exempt from height restrictions and species limitations. So, perfectly legal." I gestured towards the sign at the base of the largest palm tree. "I've even named it Thompson's Tropical Oasis, a fitting tribute, I think." Karen sputtered, her face turning a shade of purple that I didn't think was humanly possible. This is ridiculous," she exclaimed. This is monstrous. It's tacky." No, Karen," I corrected her with mock seriousness. "It's tropical, and, I might add, quite popular." I nodded towards the street, where a small crowd of neighbors had already gathered, gawking at the spectacle and taking pictures. Karen, predictably, demanded an emergency HOA meeting. She was going to put a stop to this, once and for all. She was going to rally the forces of beige and banish my tropical paradise from Pleasant Valley forever. The meeting, held that very evening, was a complete and utter disaster for Karen. The community room was packed. Everyone in Pleasant Valley, it seemed, had heard about the giant, glowing palm trees and wanted to see the showdown. Karen, looking like she hadn't slept in days, took the podium, her usual air of authority replaced by a desperate, almost frantic energy. This cannot stand," she declared, her voice shaking. "Mr. Miller has turned his yard into a tropical circus. It's a blatant mockery of our community standards. It's a threat to our property values. It's... She struggled to find the right words. It's unpleasant." She went on and on, ranting about the excessive height of the trees, the garish lights, and the general absurdity of the whole situation. She demanded the HOA take immediate action, to impose new rules, to force me to remove the palm trees. But it was no use. The neighbors weren't buying it. Many of them were still furious about my real trees being illegally cut down, and they saw my artificial palm trees as a justified act of rebellion. And then the media showed up. A reporter and cameraman from the local news station, having gotten wind of the palm tree protest, as it was now being called, arrived at the meeting, eager to capture the drama. I, of course, was happy to give them an interview. I explained the whole story, from Karen's initial complaint about my real trees, to her illegal tree massacre, to my ingenious, if I do say so myself, loophole exploitation. I even gave them a tour of Thompson's Tropical Oasis, showcasing the flashing neon lights and the towering artificial palms. "It's all about freedom, really," I said to the camera, striking a heroic pose. "The freedom to decorate your yard as you see fit, the freedom to express yourself, the freedom to have giant, glowing palm trees in your backyard, even if your HOA president hates them." The news segment, which aired that very night, was a sensation. It portrayed me as a David fighting against a Goliath HOA, a champion of individual expression battling the forces of suburban conformity. And then, to add the final, glorious nail to Karen's coffin, a local business owner, inspired by my story and seeing the potential for profit, offered to sponsor my tropical display. He owned a chain of Hawaiian-themed restaurants, and he thought my palm trees would be the perfect advertisement. Karen, at this point, was completely defeated. She'd lost the support of the community, she'd been humiliated on local television, and she was facing the prospect of having her neighborhood turned into a permanent, commercially sponsored, tropical-themed spectacle. But she made one last, desperate, incredibly stupid move. She threatened to sue me. "I'm going to sue you for everything you're worth, Miller," she shrieked, her voice cracking with rage. "You'll be living in a cardboard box by the time I'm finished with you." That's when my lawyer, who'd been patiently waiting in the wings, and who was still working on the tree-cutting lawsuit, stepped forward. "Mrs. Thompson," he said, his voice calm and measured, "I would strongly advise against that. As you know, you are the one who committed a crime. You illegally removed Mr. Miller's trees, causing him significant financial and emotional damages. You are liable, not him. And frankly, threatening to sue him after you committed felony trespass and property destruction is, well, it's not a good look." Karen paled. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She just stood there, defeated, deflated, and utterly, completely humiliated. It was at that point that it was truly over for Karen. She resigned. She put her house up for sale. She left. Georgia's artificial palm trees became a local landmark. The annual tropical HOA-free luau became a tradition. Then, one day, new neighbors moved in and asked the question. "Oh, that?" he says. "It's a long story. It all started with a little HOA misunderstanding about some natural trees." George decided against sending the letter. It was time to move on.